Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over 10 home automations I have implemented at my house. Some of these I haven't seen anywhere else. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Stay tuned so you don't miss them. Here we go. The first automation has to do with humidity in our master bathroom. So we have an exhaust fan that's on a smart switch, a Lutron, of course, a smart switch there, and we have that linked up with some other items to automate the process. So it includes the light switch for the light in the shower, which is also a Lutron, and then we have a couple of motion sensors that also grab humidity. So what we have it triggering is if the motion's detected in the shower, the shower light is turned on, or either of the humidity sensors in the shower or outside the shower in the master bathroom trigger to a certain humidity level, then it goes ahead and kicks on the exhaust fan. On the other end of that automation, we have it turning off as well. So if the light's turned off or motion stops for 20 minutes or the humidity levels drop below a certain threshold, then what it does is it checks for a couple conditions, which are humidity levels below the threshold on in the shower and outside of the shower. And if all that's, passes the conditions, then it turns off the exhaust fan so that it's always on when we need it. And then as soon as we don't need it, it shuts itself back off. The next automation automates the information from our washer and dryer to the rest of the house. So I have an automation set up where if the washer or dryer finish or go to certain cycle points, then it checks to see who's home, what time of the day it is, and as appropriate makes announcements on a few of the Google devices throughout our house.
Incoming broadcast. It says, washer complete.
So that if you're not near the laundry room, you still know when the washer dryer are done. You don't need to look at your phone or a device. It just broadcasts through the Google devices.
Incoming broadcast. It says, dryer entered cooldown.
So that's a really neat automation and really convenient.
Incoming broadcast. It says, dryer complete.
The next automation is a bit of a safety automation. I'm actually going to go over some more safety automations later, so make sure you stay tuned so you don't miss those, because those are some really great automations I'm really satisfied with and really happy we have implemented here. But this safety automation is something you would think is just a relatively easy motion automation, but it's not just motion in this instance. So we have a stairwell that people tend to turn off the light switches, either the top when they're going down or the bottom when they're going up, because they either have their hands full or they're going to have their hands full, so they turn it off ahead of time. So what I did was automated that process by putting a motion sensor at the top of the stairs and a door sensor at the top of the stairs where there's a door or two. So it checks to see if the motion sensor was active recently, or if the door was recently opened. And if those conditions are met, then it keeps the lights on or turns them back on, depending on the situation. And the triggers are either those two devices being active, or actually, if you turn the light switch off, that's one of the triggers. So you can't even inadvertently turn it off when you're using the stairs. And we find with the kids that it's really useful to keep those lights on, make sure everybody's safe going up and down the stairs, and nobody trips, and any unnecessary movement on the stairs without any light. We try to avoid those. So really happy with that automation. It was really simple and easy to set up. Next automation, actually I have two examples of. So we've utilized the Lutron Pico remotes to automate some items outside of the Lutron switches. And one of the things that we've used it for is the favorite button, activating certain things within our house. So the first example is the bar. We have the favorite button on a switch that's mounted on the wall in the basement. Activate the smart plugs throughout the bar area to turn on some LEDs and some other lights that we have in that area. So it's, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 lights there that are all plugged in, and they're not even all the same plugs. Some of them are Wise, some of them are Sylvania. There might be another a car in there or something else mixed in as well. So it does that all from that one button press. You can activate as many lights as you want, and it looks seamless on the wall with the other Lutron switches. The other place we use the favorite button of the Pico remote is in the garage. So I have a little Pico remote that we have laying in the garage. And when you press that, what it does is it unlocks the charging cord from the Tesla. So it's typically locked in. You'd have to open up your app or ask Siri or something along those lines to unlock it. But we have it set up where, if you're just in that area, you can tap the favorite button on the Lutron remote and it unlocks the Tesla charger. And we can grab the cord and store it while we drive. The next automation is regarding our doorbell. So when the doorbell's pressed, we have a few things that happen. The first thing that happens is that the Amazon Assistant makes an announcement because we have a Wise doorbell and that links really well with the Amazon Assistant. So we have that integrated there where it makes the announcement in our living room and in our basement at the bar area, which is pretty far removed from the front door.
Someone is at the doorbell.
And then at the same time, it automates over to Home Assistant and triggers lights flashing in the basement bar area. So we have two recessed lights there that are on a Lutron switch. So we have the Lutron switch toggle, on and off, whichever, it just toggles. So if it was off, it toggles to on, and it flashes a couple times there. So if you're in that area, you'd see the lights flashing and know that somebody's at the door. And at the same time, it also automates through Home Assistant the door video from the doorbell onto a couple of the Googles that we have. So one in the kitchen and one in the master bedroom. So, if we're sleeping or something, it doesn't actually make any noise. It just broadcasts the video there into the bedroom and the kitchen. So you can immediately see who's at the door and take, whatever appropriate action there is. If it's a delivery person, you can basically ignore it. Unless they need a signature or something, or if it's a guest, you can go answer the door appropriately. The next automation is another Tesla related automation. So within Home Assistant, one of the entities that exists when you connect it to the Tesla integration is the location of your vehicle. So what I have it doing is checking the location of the vehicle at the time, just before my wife would get off work. And if it's at her work location at that time, then it starts the HVAC, starts preconditioning the vehicle so that when she goes out into it, in the winter, it's nice and warm for her, or in the summer, it's cooled off and she doesn't have to get in that hot car. So that's really, neat integration. I find that we can have the Tesla integrated based on the location. The next automation uses a combination of a few things. It uses some time of day, and it uses location sensing and also a helper or a virtual switch, depending on the system you would be using for this. And what we have it doing is monitoring our thermostat and our alarm system based on the combination of the time of day and location of everybody. So if everybody leaves the house, it'll arm the alarm. And once it's armed, it goes into a special thermostat mode that reduces the amount of heat that we use or the amount of air conditioning. So it also looks at the time of day, and if somebody's home, it'll go into like a night mode when it's overnight and, reduce the heat during the winter time so that we're not heating the whole house when everybody's sleeping. It's a little bit better to sleep in a slightly cooler environment anyway, from my point of view. So that works out really well. And then in the morning, it activates based on the fact that somebody's home and heats it back up into our normal temperature for when we're home. And again, once everybody leaves, it goes into that away mode where it's arming the alarm and setting the thermostat appropriately. And also, when it arms the alarm, it makes sure the garage doors are closed and it locks the deadbolts as well, so the home is secured during that period of time. In conjunction with that, we use the helper or virtual switch for guest mode. So if somebody else is here, you obviously wouldn't want it to go into an armed alarm system setup. If there's a guest over, say it's a family member that's here when we aren't, we can have it set up where it doesn't go into that and it doesn't reduce the heat or decrease the amount of air conditioning we're using, so that it stays comfortable within the house. So we do have that that set up as well through what we call guest mode. And then once we come home, any of the devices enter the home area, the home zone, or the guest mode is activated, it will deactivate the alarm and reset the thermostat so that it's comfortable for being at home at that point. All right, the next automation I want to talk about, it's pretty expansive. So I'm going to give you a high level overview here in this video, and then I plan to follow up with the full video on this particular subject. And the subject is time of use and the off-grid setup that we're looking at here. So for the time of use, that's an electric utility based usage that charges you different rates based on the time of day or day of week that you're using the electricity. So we've recently entered a time of use pricing setup with our electric company where we pay different prices for each kilowatt based on the time of the day that we use it or the day of the week. So for us, we have a peak price from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we have what they call a super off peak price from 11 p.m. till 6 a.m. every day of the week. And then all the other hours are what they call off peak, sometimes known as shoulder rates, where it's an in between rate. So peak's the highest, that shoulder rate's an in between, or the off peak, if you will. And then we have the super off peak. So what you're trying to do in that type of situation is move all your energy usage, or as much as possible, from that peak rate over to the super off peak. Anything in that direction, whether it's from peak to off peak to super off peak, or ideally the peak to the super off peak. So we've done that through some automations. The first one is really the simplest. We have smart plugs that we use with the dehumidifiers we have, and those are some Aqara smart plugs. And we have those turn off during our peak time and then turn back on when we're in the lower rates there. So it's still plenty to reduce the humidity levels within our basement, but we're not ever paying the peak price to be able to accomplish that. Another item that we use with this setup is the Aqara hub. And what we do there is we automate the mini split that we have in our basement so that it cools or heats a little more aggressively about an hour before our peak rate. And then when it hits the peak rate, it backs it off by, a degree or two, a couple degrees there, and, from our normal. And then it resumes the normal once we're outside the peak. So essentially, it preconditions a little aggressively, and then it backs it off below where our ideal is during the peak period. And then after the peak period, resumes the normal. So it's a way that we've been able to adjust our usage there and accomplish, the better pricing that we can get out of the off-peak time frame, and we're staying, just as comfortable. We actually don't tend to notice those couple degrees here or there. That is in our basement area, so it's not an area that is super sensitive to the temperature changes anyway. And to support this, we've also done some of the programming on things like our dishwasher and our washing machine, where we'll schedule it to run outside of the peak time and try to save money that way. And finally, we have the Tesla EV and the plug-in hybrid 2022 Chrysler Pacifica hybrid that both do, charge off of our electric. So we have those scheduled to also charge during the super off-peak time rather than the peak or off-peak. So we could save a lot of money by utilizing that electricity during that really cheap time during the night there. The next automation is actually a group of automations. I have several things that I see as either safety or protecting, our home from things, or something along those lines. So I have a group of automations that I think fall into this category. The first one is regarding our smoke detectors. And we have a device that's Z-Wave that listens to the smoke detectors, listens for the smoke detector alarms and can activate based on a smoke alarm or a CO2 detection. So carbon dioxide or the smoke, either one, they actually have unique frequencies and therefore can detect it because it's actually just listening. So that's placed right beside the smoke detector. And so it's listening for the smoke and CO2 alarms, And once it detects those, it actually does some automations regarding announcements in the house, as well as sending information over to our phones as well. So we're aware of that, can take the appropriate actions. The next automation to protect our house is the water leak sensors and the water shutoff valve robot that we have installed. So the water leak sensors are the Akara sensors that we have throughout the house, and we have the EcoNet Bulldog water leak or water shutoff valve robot that shuts off the water to the house based on some automations. So what we have set up is if any of the leak sensors detect moisture, if they trigger as wet, it'll alert us. And then if particular water leak sensors detect moisture anywhere that we would expect that maybe it could be a water leak from, the freshwater side, then we actually have the Bulldog shutting off the water to the house so that it doesn't spread more and flood the house. And as soon as that triggers and shuts the water off, we get alerts that the water shut off, and there's announcements for the water conditions as well, so that everybody that will be within the house is aware. Plus, us having our cell phones, even if we're not home, we'd be aware of what's going on at the house, and we can act appropriately, have a neighbor come over, or whatever we might need to do at that time. The next automation in this category could be a money saving automation, or it could be a safety automation. And this is regarding our refrigerators and a chest freezer we have. So I have some sensors in each of those that monitors the temperature within that device. And then if it passes a certain threshold for 2 hours, it alerts us. And then if it's, again, at 5 hours, it'll alert us again. And the positive here is, if there's a problem, we can try to address it quickly and salvage the food if possible. Or if we're not able to address it, and we know that it's exceeded these temperatures for an extended period of time, we can be aware and discard the food as appropriate, so that we aren't eating food that's not any good, that's spoiled, and getting sick from that. So it's a dual purpose automation here, and really useful. And if somebody leaves the refrigerator open or something, this would trigger too, once it warmed up a little bit in there. So I have it relatively aggressively set. That way, we're alerted pretty quickly when there's something wrong. The final automation that I'm putting in this category is regarding our furnace. So what we do is we have the thermostat monitored to determine if the temperature on the thermostat, that the room actually is, falls outside of some thresholds. And in that instance, that means our furnace probably has some type of issue, or air conditioning has some type of issue that we need to be alerted to. And this actually came up right around Christmas. We had an issue, and the furnace, it was blowing, but it wasn't on, and it never actually ended up kicking on. And eventually, it just shut off completely. And if it wasn't for the fact that it was really cold in the house, we wouldn't have known for a while. Could have been off for several days if it was a warmer day out, and we wouldn't have noticed. But it was quite cold that day, so we noticed pretty quickly. In this instance, as soon as it gets outside of those bounds that we have set up, then it's going to alert us. That way, very quickly, we can take action and determine, what's going on with the furnace or the air conditioning. Maybe we have it turned off and the windows are open, and that's fine, but we'd be alerted. That way, we can take action if appropriate. And the final automation here is a geofencing automation, where when we come home, the garage door is open. But there's a big nuance here. We have 3 garage doors and 3 different drivers in our house. So we have to figure out which door to open for which driver. So we have the mirrors set up on the garage doors, so we can easily trigger individual bays because they're each, a separate garage door opener. So my son's is pretty easy. If he comes home, his garage door bay opens. My wife and I would tend to switch cars. We don't have a specific car that one of us drives or the other one. And a lot of times we'll end up taking the same car too, because we have certain vehicles that we use for certain purposes. So what I have it doing is when we enter the geofencing location of our house, the zone here for our home, then what it does is it checks information about the Tesla. So if the Tesla's shift state is in drive, then it opens the Tesla door, or if its location that its destination location is home, it'll open the Tesla door. I'm not seeing anybody else using the shift state of the Tesla to determine which garage door to open. And then if when it checks neither of those things are true, it'll go ahead and open our Chrysler Pacifica van garage door for us, assuming that we're not driving the Tesla, we're driving the van instead. That's a pretty unique automation because I haven't seen anybody else using the shift state in any of the information that I've seen or read. So I think it's a great way for us to trigger the appropriate garage door and automate that seamlessly for us. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss that more in-depth time of use automation that I'm going to set up with our solar and battery backup as well.